I can. It's something to just play with, really.
What are you hoping to do with this long term?
I mean, I've had a show before. I ran a show out of the CBC studios in Toronto.
Oh, cool.
And that was just massive, you know. We had like in-studio crew and field crew.
Yeah.
It was huge. I loved it, and I produced that for like a year and a half. And then for some reason I thought that the pursuit of money was going to be success, and success equals happiness, right? And then I got to the point where I had that money and that success, and it was the worst point in my life. It was like going and just spending money to try and feel happy and crap like that. So now I'm back to what's really important, being creative and having fun.
I should hook you up with Michael.
Yeah.
Michael's a senior producer at CBC. He worked for them for decades. Anyway, so they have him contracted back, but he's always been looking for something like a little bit off the beaten path from CBC Calgary. Super interesting guy. His son, one son passed away from overdose. His other son they were very worried about, so they kind of focused in on him, and so now he's a manager at a car wash. Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Family. Yeah. Regular clients. Drinks Pinot Noir. I know everybody by what they drink.
That's how my wife serves, and she knows everybody by their drink, right?
Exactly. What do they serve? Like, yeah. No, I did a radio show too, actually, when I was doing financial planning. I did, not a real radio show, I did an internet radio show that I produced for, like, in terms of, like, finance and just people.
That's more real than a real radio show, though.
Well, I kind of had, like, I didn't have not as sophisticated a setup, but fairly sophisticated setup. And it was a lot of fun to do. So, a friend of mine did ad hoc radio, so he gave me a time slot on it on a station. So every Sunday I'd be slotted in for a pre-recorded hour and a half. It was good.
That's cool.
Something different, but I mean, I'm huge into community and getting people up there and working with them, just because I think this, frankly, is better than CBC. I mean, what?
There's no corporate sponsors. There's no agenda. All I really want to do is just build up people that are doing good in the community and bring that forward to show. Because a lot of people, I feel like they want to make a difference, they want to do something, but they feel like they're one person. But if you show them that there's a community out there that are doing those things, then it makes it a little easier to jump on board.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree with that. I've had, we can get into interviewing and stuff. But yeah, like from my background, like I've always done volunteer work as a way of giving back. And so I eventually turned into doing my own. A friend of mine came to me and said, you got to do your own festival. I want to do my own festival. Can you help me organize? And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It's like my background. And my background, actually, to give you are you recording or are we live?
Yeah, we're live. I like to just spring it on people.
Right, no worries. I have no problems with that. So what happened was, a long time ago in a galaxy far away, I lived in North Van, or West Van, actually. And I was at Capilano College. And so I did my first, I guess, quasi-underground, because it was still college, it wasn't university yet. So my first diploma was in journalism, believe it or not. And I did an article on hacking, which really got me into computer science. And so then I did a whole bunch of certs in computer science, and I got started into doing my own company and working for myself, essentially. And graduated with a general studies diploma in liberal arts and mathematics.
That sounds so vague.
Well, exactly. Like, what does that exactly mean? What it did was, my dad was a senior manager at BC Tel at the time, so he roped me into doing network and network administration, like IT stuff. And so when I got into it, it turned out that I was really good at hacking. And so I really focused on the back-end security stuff for BC Tel and TELUS. And in fact, I really never knew the impact I had there until I'd say about 2 years ago, when I ran into my former manager, who eventually went on to become a senior vice president, to Darren Entwistle. I think he was the former CEO, then he stepped down, then he went back up. Okay.
Yeah.
Corporate politics, yeah. So he said the scariest day of his life was when this this 18-year-old kid walks into his office and says, "We really need more security for our back-end internet users." And he said, "No, we don't. We're fine." And then the next day, that kid showed up in his office with his SIN number, credit card numbers, orders he'd done, where he lived. And he was like, "Okay, we do." And then he's like, pretty much after that, he championed pretty hard for a virus scan and firewall for home clients. And so that's where BC Tel at the time did the deal with McAfee. And then I was assigned to doing pretty much security full time. But it kind of, I suppose like you, like I hated it.
Yeah.
It got to the point where it was boring and it was killing me and I was working way too much. So I sold the company to my dad and his business partner and then moved to Alberta in 2000, right after the Y2K rollover, which I was truly disappointed. Airplanes didn't fall out of the sky. Things didn't
No riots.
It was just sad. Like, there was a lot of buildup. A lot of buildup.
Yeah.
And it was just a letdown. In 2000, although the only non-letdown part of that was New Year's Eve, where on a dare I chugged a 750 of tequila.
Oh!
Guess what my time was?
Before you blacked out, or how long it took you?
Well, I was kind of in and out of consciousness, but I chugged a bottle of tequila in 18 seconds.
Oh!
My friends were truly amazed until I remember New Year's Eve, much like a coma patient, sitting on the ground, fading in and out of consciousness. And then the funniest story of that evening was a friend of mine was genuinely concerned, and he said, should I call the hospital or the parents? So my parents drove down to pick me up. I've always been a big guy.
Yeah.
So my dad and my best friend picked me up off the ground, and on the way out, and I don't truly remember this. It wasn't until about 6 months or so later I ran into the lady whose house we were partying at. And she's like, "You are the nicest person in the world. On the way out, you stopped me, you thanked me because you had a very lovely time. You profusely apologized if you puked on anything, and then your dad carried you into the car laughing." So the next morning I woke up with a fairly epic hangover, and I hadn't realized my parents had drawn mustaches and a beard on my face and devil brows, and then took me to church that way, hungover.
Your parents sound like pretty cool people.
They are. They have a very oddball sense of humor, which is, I suppose, where I get it from. Anyways, so I got out here in 2000, and I did a second degree, Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies with a background in religious philosophy, which is way more fun than comp sci. And that's when I discovered I had attention deficit hyperactivity, which is kind of my never sleep, always move philosophy, I suppose. And
I don't think that all those disorders are bullshit. It's, you like to multitask and do a bunch of stuff all the time.
I like to keep busy.
Yeah.
And I got into financial. Well, I'm gonna back that up. I worked for a company called Belkin doing wireless networking. That's how I met my then girlfriend, now wife. I graduated. She needed a co-op year in school, so we went to Japan for a year and a half, from 2006 to 2007, and then came back, got into finance, and I thought, this is where I'm going to make it. And then I realized that a lot of financial people, they're really nice people, but they're morally bankrupt, and they're also they don't really do any good for anybody other than themselves, and it wasn't the right vibe. But I did run into a friend of mine who got me started volunteering with festivals, and so we did Calgary's first hip hop festival. 4+, all the 4 aspects of hip hop, so spoken word, rap battle, dance, and graffiti, which we fought with the city on, because they were like, "No, graffiti's a problem. No, graffiti's an art, a legitimate art form." And if you look at it, Stampede is basically the epitome of graffiti in the city, because everybody graffitis up their stores.
Yeah.
Right? But it's graffiti nonetheless. So we did that festival, and I realized I really liked that. I liked the organization side of it, and that's really what I like doing, and especially giving back to community. So I started doing more volunteering with festivals. I was working with Lilac Festival. I started out as a site assistant. They made me a site manager, and they eventually put me up to ops manager, which I really enjoy doing every year. It's a hell day, but it's a fun day in so much that I like the organization of it. I'm there from 5:36 in the morning till about 9 at night.
Yeah.
So it's a long day, but it's fun. And then I started volunteering. I do the Mixed Martial Arts Club at Mount Royal. I've been coaching that for 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and then other festivals have come my way, and started volunteering with Comic Expo, just because I was always interested in seeing how organization-wise an organization like that works. By then I'd been way out of financial planning because I just didn't realize. I truly do think people should live by the motto, I'd rather be broke and happy than rich and miserable. And I kind of followed that and did a couple of odd jobs here or there, did some organizational work for people, did a contract on construction management out in Whistler, and then came back, and that's how you met me, as a friend of mine had built that beautiful Point McKay wine store.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my talents is making money and networking, and so I looked at the store and I said, there's a lot of broken things here. I like taking something broken and fixing it. And so the store just didn't work, and he was, for whatever reason, just didn't like it. And so he took this whole thing and just went, I pumped so much money into it, I just want to wash my hands clean and get out. And so we bought it for a song, and we said, this really isn't a liquor store. It needs to be a wine boutique,
Mm-hmm.
Cater to a very certain crowd, especially for the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the current incarnation of Point McKay, and so that's made me happy. But that opened up opportunities. We shot a TV show Mini, Charlie Foxtrot Terra, which was our take on completely effed Earth. Well, I'm a huge sci-fi fan, and I think my co-writer Dan is a huge. We're both nerds, like hardcore nerds, and so we sat. I looked at the people that I had been in the MMA club, and they're all kind of actors. They've all done producing. They've in school,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they've never been given a legitimate chance or had the money to kind of do a professional setup.
Yep.
And so I said, look, I've got the cash, I'll fund it, but you guys need to write a show. I'll do all the back end work,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll be kind of what I call a shits and giggles project. We'll do it, we'll have some professional credit, we'll put it on the interwebs,
Yeah.
and the world will see. And so we wrote this thing, and then Dan knew this actress. Actually, she's brilliant, Jill Maria Robinson, super, super cool human being, has done a lot of independent work here in Calgary. Notably, Go Fish, which is an independent project that was up on Shaw TV.
Yeah.
And she brought in Alan Stickle. He's been on Hell on Wheels. He's been on Go Fish. He's this older firefighter who, if you close your eyes right now in your mind and you think of, the sheriff in the town, that old grizzled guy with the coffee, right? That's Al, right there to a T. He's a really cool human.
Somehow, even when I picture the Old West, the sheriff has a Tim Hortons cup in his hand.
And Al's really cool. And so they sat down and they did a cast reading, right? And they're asking me for real money, and I'm explaining to them I don't even have cartoon money to give them. It's my entire budget for this thing was $1,500.
Yeah.
We'll shut the store down, we'll ghetto shoot, we'll get this all done. But all of a sudden I got these professionals in, and I got a little bit nervous. And so when we rewrote the script, two people got involved that I think were very crucial to where I am right now with it. Neil Enoch, who's done Doc Christmas as his book, fantastic local Calgary author, entrepreneur and actor. He also does Someone, which is a TV show that he's produced and acted in, an independent about time travel. Super guy. And Sheldon Baranek. And Sheldon's one of our clients at Point McKay.
Mm-hmm.
So Sheldon, we all sit down to do this reading, right? And we're all introducing ourselves. And it turns out Sheldon, I like Sheldon. He's a really cool guy. Really got along with him. Funny sense of humor. His girlfriend Tony, they're hilarious human beings to hang out with.
Yeah.
And it turns out Sheldon used to produce for Touchstone Disney. He's also responsible for the 8th best-selling game of all time in the world, the Home Improvement board game.
No way.
Which he gave me a copy. So it's sitting there in my house. And so Sheldon, all of a sudden, we're sitting there doing this reading, and I'm looking at the script, and then we finish the reading of the script, and we're like, okay, we're going to go shoot on this and this day. and these are the 2 locations. And Sheldon comes up and he says, you know what, Mark, I think we can make, like, if you are genuinely want to take this to the next level, you're gonna need to improve the script, because the way it is right now, this is cartoony, like this will never sell. So he comes over to this is gonna, like, I hope nobody from the AGLC ever watches this, because he comes over to the wine store after close. We sat down, we had the script out all over the counter, right, and we're going scene by scene, and we probably drank about 2 bottles of wine, you know, worked an additional 10 hours. Like, I left at like 4:35 in the morning, right? And we'd rewritten the whole script and to a very professional grade. And so Sheldon, you know, leaves this and he says, you know, now it's something that I think could get picked up. It's very interesting. You know, I want you to shoot it, produce it, and I was directing, which I've discovered I need a lot of work as a director. As an actor-director, I've got a long way to go.
This has all become very serious all of a sudden.
Here, you know what? None of this would have become this serious if it weren't for one incident. So at Comic Expo, they turned me from just... So because of my festival experience, instead of being a regular, I think they call them red shirt volunteers. Yeah. So just you work your little section, you get a free day pass or a free pass when you're not working, right? So you can see the expo and then you go back to working. They put me into operations, and they put me into a highly specialized team called... At first we were the crisis response team, but now because crisis seems a little blood pumping, they turned me to response team. There was response team, and so they put me into a sub team at first, which is response team is basically the fix it. We're like the black ops. Like if there's a problem, we have the authority. We work on the authority of the festival owners to fix the problem right away, and it's great because in times when if in the course of normal operations things go, you know, foobar. We got called in to fix it, right? And we were able to do whatever we want. So the second year I volunteered with Expo, they took me from being a response team member to a response team sub-lead. So that means there's a team, like it's a pyramid organizational structure, and as a sub-lead I'm responsible to lead, but as a sub-lead I get my own section, and I'm allowed to assemble my own team. So I have to choose from the existing volunteers that have come back for response, which... You know, I'm blessed that I've got a guy like Russell, who's a 911 operator who deals with, you know, crisis all the time. Like this guy, I don't know how he copes or what he deals with. He's like the most mellow human being I've ever met. He's just like, yeah, you know, the fire's raging, probably it'll burn down, but everyone's fine. Don't worry about it. Like he's just, it doesn't matter what it is. He's just mellow.
It's gonna be cool under pressure, yeah.
And then I got Rob. He's our CMP guy. Super nice human being, and I mean each response team has at least one police officer or a CMP member, simply in case we get into something, you know, quite outside of the ordinary. Like one of our media guests at the festival had an issue with an overzealous fan, like legally overzealous or legally entitled overzealousy. So Rob gets dealt with, and so some of the other team members we built up, and one of them was this girl Stephanie, who's still in high school. I think one of the biggest problems for me when I look at organizations is they don't have any sort of succession planning. They just keep hiring these same old cronies, and then all of a sudden they're like, well, we're all retiring. How's this company going to survive, right? And there's no... So I'm very big on grabbing younger people, you know, under 20, even like late high school, and putting them into volunteer placements, because it helps them build their experience, helps build their resume, but it brings them up with an organization. So when the organization starts changing over, right, they're growing with, they understand the operation side of it. So this girl, Stephanie, super cool person, and I said, you know, like, I'm doing this free TV show. Do you want to come and help out? We could use a production assistant. And I honestly get it from her parents' side of it. There's this, you know, mid-30s guy, I'm 38, who's doing a TV show that he's shooting himself, and he wants their teenage daughter to show up, you know.
Come over to the
store. You know, like, and I really do get it. Her dad, you know, nice guy, but engineer. And he interviewed me for about 2 hours, which is very interesting, and I'm telling him about what I do. And so he said something that I love in life when people come to me and go, "That's impossible. You'll never do anything. You don't have any experience in TV." That a matter of fact, Sonny Jim. And I'm like, I may not have experience in TV, but I have a lot of experience in organizing, and I have a lot of experience in leadership, and I have all the pieces in place to do a very professional show. And he said, "Well, it'll never succeed. No, Stephanie's not allowed to talk to you anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine. That's a dad call, and I'm not going to argue with it."
2-hour interview to get that? Try and put you down and be like, "No, she's not going."
Yeah, and you know what? I get it. It's a parent thing, right? Like, as a parent, you learn that, sometimes you're going to have to draw a hard line for your kid because your kid's not going to see it, right? And you have to make a call. Mm-hmm. But in his case, and to his defense, his daughter wants to be a doctor, so he wants to make sure that she's focused and on track. And I think he's, frankly, as a parent myself, I think he's way too controlling, and people probably say about me, I'm way too laissez-faire about my daughter. So I'm like, you're laughing. So my wife has relatives in Invermere, right? And they have this big wood-burning stove in their house. If my wife watches this, I'm fucked. Can I say that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so she's like, "Don't touch the stove," because my daughter really wants to. And this stove in the winter runs 24/7. So you can imagine it as a wood-burning stove that's heating the entire house. Yep. It is hot. Yep. And so my daughter keeps wanting to touch it. My wife can't tell her no. And she's like, "Okay, she's not allowed downstairs." And I'm like, "What's she going to learn from that?" So we go downstairs. Right. Eve wants to touch it. Okay. So she touches it, burns her hand. Now she knows she's not going to touch it. Perfect. So anyway, Stephanie's dad said, "This will never succeed. This thing will never get off the ground." And that is, if anything, fuel for the insanity fire that is my brain.
It was probably the whole universal purpose of that whole thing was just to fire you up.
Exactly. And I said, "Yeah, you want me to take something that's a Canadian-produced TV show, that's a non-success, that's a non-issue, and turn it into a huge success." Okay. Fine. Now I'm interested. So, like, at first you had my interest, now I'm invested. So I said, okay, instead of just pumping $1,500, I pumped I think at the end, it's about $12,000 into this thing. Hired a professional crew. Mm-hmm. So instead of ghetto shooting it off an SLR, we grabbed an independent photographer. One of the guys involved early on, Andreas, who I coached in MMA. Like, most of these people are MMA people, actually. Mm-hmm. So Andreas I coached, but he out east met a guy named David Fife, and David's a fantastic cinematographer, professional. He does music videos. He's shooting a documentary right now. So he came in, and I said, "Look, I can't pay you a professional grade at the moment, but if you do this, I'll pay for you to come out here," because he lives in Vancouver, and with the expectation that if this gets picked, we're going to take you pro. Right. Okay, so David was in. We shot the whole thing, and then I get a call from this guy in Los Angeles, Steve Owen. He was involved in actually producing Straight Outta Compton. Okay. Not the movie, the album.
Oh, yeah?
He's been a music producer and independent producer for Touchtone, or for Paramount. And he said, "Look, if you actually put something together, I can help you get this off the ground." And I finally found out that I met him through Jill once again. And so he helped me polish it up. And I think his time and his insight was very valuable into how to make this look professional. My funniest conversation with him was, he looked at one of my actors. He's also going to Vancouver Film School eventually. He's done editing, and so he's looking at Andrew is looking at does the edit. Steve does the edit, and he's like, "No, this is really bad. Like, this edit really needs to change. How much money do you have for editing?" And so I flippantly said, 50. And he's like, "Okay, 50,000, you can totally get a great editor. I got a guy, you'll do it in a day." And I'm like, "No, I meant $50. Like, I don't have $27,000 lying around to shoot a 5-minute short. And so he's like, okay, so you need to find a professional editor. And so through Dan, who's writing with us, we found Nate Greener, who's working for NMAX as a videographer, but he also does professional editing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did all our editing. It comes up, so now we've got this professional 5-minute short. It's edited beautifully. Steve likes it, except he has one criticism. And so he's like, of all your actors, the guy in this scene, his lines are good, but he needs to have stronger delivery. You're either going to have to overdub him or get rid of him. And I'm like, and so we're like, Al? Because he knows Al. And he's like, no, not Al. And I mean, this guy. He's like, I'm like, you mean me? And he's like, oh shit, sorry, dude. Like, it was you. And so, I'm like, but he's like, but it did illustrate, and I think it illustrated a point to me, as if this one needs to be a success, or if I want it to be a success. I'm taking acting lessons, and I've been doing a lot more in terms of understanding how a director should be doing the scenes, and it's nice being surrounded by professional people who are helping me improve that. So then we get this whole thing together, we put it up on the interwebs, and we take it down literally 2 days later, and with the thing that now we've got everything's paid, everyone's been paid, everyone's into it, and now I have this professional crew and all these pieces, and they come to me and they said, we got to do this like all Canadian entertainment's done. Apply for grants to GovCan. GovCan gives us some money. We, ghetto shoot, compared to Hollywood, ghetto shoot this, right? And then I kind of looked at it and I said, this is interesting because this is a severely broken thing, right? Much like the store. The store was a very broken thing, right? And when we fixed the store, we tripled the value from our purchase price of the store to what it is appraised at today, which I'm quite happy about. And I have great staff.
And it hasn't even been that long.
And it hasn't, exactly, because I'm good at fixing, like seeing where a problem is because of, I think, my ADHD, and seeing things from a different light and saying, this is very broken. And after having access to somebody like Steve Owen, who's this top-end producer in Hollywood, right, and having conversations with him and understanding how they do it in Hollywood and looking at, this is how a real professional organization does it, and this is, Canada, which is the, like we're the hillbillies of the entertainment industry. There's some very severe problems. And so I did some research. Turns out that, and this was probably the most startling fact, and this is a Globe and Mail article written a few months ago now, what is considered a financial success as a movie in Canada, like by profit?
I don't have a guess, but
throw a number out there. If I shoot a
1.5 million.
Yeah,
I was gonna say 300,000 at first, but it's like no.
Try 8.
8,000.
$8,000 is considered a over the moon financial success. All Canadian produced, shot, and everything. Right. The most successful Canadian movie ever shot was Trailer Park Boys, which netted $2 million.
Yeah.
Overall, though, our industry is jokey, and what happens? The government subsidizes so much of it that it's for a lot of American producers, it's more worth it to come up here, engage, get government grants to subsidize the cost of their shoot, get some of their advertisers' funds to shoot, produce the TV show, and then take it back to the States and sell it on the open market.
Yeah, we get CanCon in there. It works out for everybody. Except in Nova Scotia, the government just took it away, which is funny because the Trailer Park Boys are there.
And ultimately, and that's exactly, it's a very broken system, right? And in essence, it misses, I think, a lot of trends that people are ignoring because they think traditional TV and movies work. They don't. I think they're very flawed and broken. I mean, Mission Impossible Rogue Nation is a good example of how broken that system is, where, everyone's like, oh, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible made millions of dollars. Well, the studio that invested in it, which ironically enough is Paramount Pictures, barely even broke even at the box office, because once you pay your exhibitor, once you pay all the expenses out, they're running just a little in the red right now, right? they won't run into the black until the or third tier merchandising kicks in, right? So DVD soundtrack, T-shirts. If they do a Monopoly game or any of the other peripherals kick in, they won't make any money. And so and this is something, if you do your research, Steven Spielberg's been talking about. And as much as Spielberg is a victim of his own successes, he's also been successful because of it. And his blockbuster mentality, where and I really Jaws was shot very traditional old Hollywood. Spielberg's best movie is probably Goonies when it comes to crossing over merchandising and getting somebody else to pay for it, instead of the studio just coughing the money up. Because Spielberg shot Goonies with 3 funders. And when I ask people, what do you remember about Goonies? And have you seen Goonies?
No.
Terrible example then.
I'm just terrible. I went to film school and I haven't seen any movies. I like making them, not watching them.
No, it's
weird.
No, it's perfectly reasonable, right? But Goonies, a lot of people remember, what's his name? Timothy Mikowski's character, Sloth, the big warped face guy. They remember the adventure, but when you look at and I've been paying a lot of attention to who's putting, whose products are in shot. If you look at who paid to be in that movie, it's quite obvious. It's Jeep. The new Cherokee Jeep is in there. It wins the race. It beats all the Fords.
Right.
Right. And it's featured prominently in several scenes. Guns and Ammo, surprisingly enough, the magazine paid to be in it. There's a really weird bathroom shot where the guy's holding it up like this. Like when you're sitting on the can, right? A lot of people, when they're taking a crap, aren't going to hold a magazine, in front of their face like that.
Yeah.
They're going to put it on their lap.
Yeah.
So that was weird. And then everyone wears Nike. And so Spielberg realized that in order to produce these blockbusters and eventually Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, right, which Jeep funded Jurassic Park, because
they're all driving Jeeps, yeah.
Right? So what happened is that he stumbled on this formula, and eventually the formula becomes so broken because now they're just looking for high-tier advertisers. They realize to get people motivated enough to go to the theater, they can only get high A-list celebrities. And so this industry is totally broken because, and Spielberg's right, a lot of the independent stuff, and where Shia LaBeouf, the Beef, whatever, his first Transformers actor from Michael Bay.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He goes off the rails, is that what happens is a lot of these independent productions, the stuff that really drives creativity is lost, and Hollywood, basically, they're just reselling the same package over and over, right? So, we used to laugh, Rocky 24 coming out, but I mean this year, Rocky, I suppose 9 is coming out, right? It's Apollo Creed's son, Rocky's the old trainer. Like it's this bizarre world where they're just rehashing the same storylines, the same plot without any creativity from independents, right? And this is the problem CBC faces. CBC, for whatever reason, you have Jean Gomeshi, and he has his own problems running Q. They pump too much money into one, and they don't share it out with enough independent talent, and see from the independent talent funding it how it's going to succeed. And in Hollywood, in analogous, you get a movie like John Wick, which does wildly well. It triples its initial investment, which is more than you can say for Rogue Nation. So I looked at all that and said, look, all this data, and this is what my ADHD brain came up with, is like, who's doing stuff that's making money right now, and who's talking to the art form that is media and entertainment? Well, Netflix does it really well. Even though they're taking a retried third-tier superhero like Daredevil from Marvel and shooting their own content, right? You still have like
it was done decent.
Exactly. So then the question is you watched it? I take it.
I watched a couple episodes.
Good. So who funded it?
I have no idea. It wasn't Netflix.
No. Do you think they're going to use their own money on something like that?
No.
They, in essence, shot a 13-episode commercial for Ford Samsung. That's the reality, right? They nobody noticed it. It's all there in your subconscious, right? I'm just a freak, but it's all there. And so they got 13 episode commercial for Ford Samsung. It's totally ingrained in the show, and the show watches beautifully. It's a really well done show. Good character development, good plot. From an artistic point of view, the story is incredibly true. And that's another thing. Hollywood and TV are ignoring the one thing it's probably the reason I download everything. I pirate everything. There isn't a single thing I don't pirate.
I have an email I just got for alleged downloading infringement or whatever.
Copyright infringement.
Yeah.
But the point is what I don't want to see is I can even record now. I have TELUS, and it's even annoying me now. Is that I don't want to watch commercials, right? I mean, Big Bang Theory annoys me in so much that Chuck Lorre is embedding Dell advertising, Nintendo advertising, DC Comics advertising into the show. So I'm watching advertising segued by other actual advertising, which irritates me to no end. I just want to watch the show.
Yeah.
And all of us binge watch. It's the trend. Like, we'll watch 13 episodes of a whole season, if not 10 seasons in a go, without getting off the couch. Well, okay. So that tells us a few things. Our consumers no longer want to watch commercials. They don't want to watch commercials shot by the movie studios because they don't want that, as Will Smith is tying up his Converse like this mid-camera shot. Oh, these vintage Converse are awesome. You need to try these baby Converse out because Converse are the most Converse shoe in the Converse world. Now I'm going to go converse with somebody else on set. And the studios miss it because they don't know how to embed it properly. Their writers either lack the creativity or the advertisers have too much power.
It could be done more subtly and
way more subtly. And Netflix is a beautiful example of it, right? So we took the model that Netflix has built and said, and I wrote a business plan around it, and all the pieces we put in place at Charlie Foxtrot Terra, which, by the way, totally wouldn't have existed. That whole thing, this whole production company wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact that I own a wine store and I didn't have Stephanie's dad going, "You'll never do this. This will never get off the ground." Ha ha! Take that, Space Coyote. And so we built a model around it. We've engaged an advertising company in terms of how we're going to raise funds for it. We're not going to GovCan. I'm actually adamant that I'm not going to be pulling money from the Canadian government. We're doing a very avant-garde show. It's shot in post-apocalyptic Earth. We are going to piss off a lot of oil and gas companies because we talk about the damage, the future damage that strip mining, fracking, a lot of the environmental issues that we have. And because it's sci-fi, it allows me to deal with it in the future.
People kind of treat it as sci-fi now when it's actually happening anyway.
Well, and that's exactly it. When we ignore the fact that fracking has caused earthquakes in zones that have never had earthquakes before, and we wrote about how we basically turfed a whole town in our show, it allows us to explore that possibility. Now, CalFrac's going to be angry, right? And there's a lot of government people who have money that they're probably getting bribed by are going to be angry. But there's so much toxic sludge from fracking. There's a lot of wasted groundwater that's basically taken out of our food supply for production. A lot of the chemicals that are released, as that one farmer, I can't remember his name right now, but he had a property, kept blowing up things with well sites because his cattle were getting stillborn. And he saw the increase as soon as they started to do drilling close to his property. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff that we can deal with in the show. And if I'm beholden to the Canadian government, with Trudeau, I think we have a little bit better chance of getting away with it. But if it had been Harper, right? I mean, he spent most of his time muzzling anybody who's getting grants. So if I'm reliant on an entity that basically gets to him, I realize that as somebody who is asking money from potential products or services, right, we can get muzzled by those same products. So we have to be very careful with who we choose, and they have to understand that we're more interested in telling the story and pursuing the art form of media than we are in telling, the corporate lie. Like, Volkswagen doesn't emit bad emissions.
Yeah. And you'll deal with not having a $50,000 budget for editing.
Yeah, well, we're shooting it, I believe, at $300,000 an episode. Right, so to do 13 episodes is going to be about $3.6 million. So it's, and once again, I don't want to pay them Canadian wages, right? I want to pay the people who are involved in the project real wages. Not quite Hollywood yet, because I don't have that kind of clout.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that they're paid real money. To that point as well, it's like at my store, right? Probably the funniest conversation I had a few months ago was we had a customer come in and she goes, "Well, I bet you're really upset that minimum wage is going to $11.30." And I sat there and I looked at her. I'm like, "No, not really." And she's like, "Well, aren't your expenses going to go up?" And I'm like, "I already pay my people $15 an hour to work at my store. When minimum wage went up, they went up to $16 an hour plus bonus. They get bonuses. So at my store, they can make up to $20 to $25 an hour if they really put the work into it. And I want people to be well paid, because when people are well paid, they're not worried about food. They're not worried about where their next meal is going to come. There's a whole lot of stress that takes out of, I make less money overall, but then everybody has ownership inside the thing that you're doing. And so with the show, I said, we're not going to pay them, everyone came to me and said, if we shoot now in the fall, we'll work, at base rate again, we'll shoot a whole 30-minute episode, and we're going to do it at no pay. You can give us $100, like a retainer, just let us get involved in it. And I basically said, no, I don't want to underpay you for what you're worth. You're worth something, and you're worth a lot of something to me, because I can't compete with, with shows coming up from the States like Fargo, who have quite a lot of advertising money invested into it. But I want to get there, and I want to do it on my own terms and my own rules. I don't want to come up with another ghetto Canadian project in so much as early Trailer Park Boys, where it's shot on a nickel and dime budget. You pray to God that it resonates with a crowd, right? And then it takes off, and then everybody is kind of chronically underpaid. I want everybody to be well paid for doing it, because that kind of success attracts more success. So we revamped it, and like I said, we've engaged in a couple of different. We engaged apparently in a few advertising companies. It wasn't until one said, "You know what? This is crazy, but it could work really, really well if we do it right." So, and they're the ones who we're going to eventually, hopefully, go with permanently to raise to help us with fundraising for it. Because frankly, I think in Canada we have so much wide open space. We have so much talent up here. And it's so underused. Yeah. Until it goes to Hollywood and makes Hollywood money. So, anyways, so that's it. And then what's the other thing on my radar? Of course, my ADHD brain doesn't let me rest, and so a couple of guys at the top of the Calgary Comic Expo. They're known as the Alberta Group collectively, so they run the Edmonton, Calgary, and Saskatoon Comic and Entertainment Expos. Calgary is the largest. Broke off. They started their own company called the International Comic and Entertainment Expo, and so they made me their lead operations manager for next year. So I'll be in Vancouver, or sunny Red Deer, then Vancouver, and then Winnipeg, planning all that.
Flying around for comedy.
Well, for comic-y. I mean, it'll be a lot. I like Expo in so much that we get the opportunity to meet really interesting people. We have some very interesting conversations. I think from the first year, it was kind of just kind of check everything out and see how it goes. In the second year, the most interesting interaction I had is because a lot of the guys who do security on that, they know my background in martial arts. I'm fairly well known to this because a lot of the security guys also work on other festivals, and so they know my background. Right. They also know like that I'm an avid martial artist. I think the funniest story I had from last year, one of the wildlife people or like preservation people or something, or bird rescue, that was it. Their parrot got away, so I got called up to go and try and find this parrot that's like 3 stories up at the top of the BMO Center. And frankly, I'm like, all right. So I called Stampede because Stampede has access. I do not have access to go that high because that's a security zone that high. And so I'm standing at the door, and these 2 security guys come up, and they're escorting Rosario Dawson, a super cool actress. My favorite movie of, she's in Daredevil, obviously, but my favorite movie of hers is Clerks 2, which I thought was hilarious. And hopefully I'm getting that reference right, because somebody will look it up and I'll get Googled by nerds. You're wrong, you don't know what you're doing. And so these 2 security guards are like, look, we know that your response team, it's really not your thing, but do you mind just waiting with her until her limousine shows up? Sure, why not? I got, like, what else am I doing right now? Yep. It's the end of Expo, everybody's kind of like doing takedown. She was one of the last media guests to leave, so I'm standing there with her, and it was literally like the limousines coming in and they had to get another media guest out. So she's standing there with me, and she kind of looks at me and she goes, why do they leave me with you? Like, you're just some, random, you're not security, you're some random volunteer. I'm like, oh, I kind of quickly explained her, I think I do a lot of festivals, we do a lot of media stuff, like I've worked with, that aspect of it. I can
kill motherfuckers. It's okay.
And I'm like, I'm also, they also know me because I do a lot of martial arts. And she goes really quiet and she goes, you must be really good. I'm like, you have no idea. And she's like, I'm glad they left me with you. And that was it. And her limo pulled up and she laughed. From first year, my funniest interaction was Joan Rivers, of all people, before she passed away a few months later. So Joan Rivers randomly flies into Calgary to show up to Expo with her whole entourage, and we're escorting. So they call response, and they're like, we have no security detail for her, but we want to make sure that Miss Rivers isn't in any, doesn't have any problems. Who would like to be on her, impromptu security detail? And the RCMP guys were engaged, the police guys were engaged, so they're like, Mark, can you do it? Okay, no problem. So they put me on it with 2 other people, Tracy and Brandon, and so we're walking her around the grounds, making sure that like we've got our distance, but we're keeping people back. And of course, Joan Rivers, really kind of honestly, like, you never, I guess as a guy who watches TV and sees these people, you're like, who cares, right? And then you meet them in real life, and you realize, what makes them who they are, because you see that personality that they exhibit inside whatever role they're playing or whatever thing they're doing online, and then you see that in real life. And Joan Rivers, people were, some people were saying, good to see you, hi Joan, we love you, and there's other people heckling her, and she's just, one after another, just taking them down, and it's like this feisty old lady is just hacking people apart. So finally, she's decided that she just, wants to get back to the limousine. She's a little tired or peaked or whatever it is, and so she's got her handler with her. And as we're walking back to the limousine, and this I will never forget for the end of my days, Joan Rivers is walking along, and she finally turns to her, I think it's agent or handler, whoever this guy is, and goes, what kind of town is this? And he's like, it's a cowboy town, Joan. And she looks around, she goes, what kind of fucking cowboy town is this? There's no ranches, there's no horses, there's nothing here. And he's like, well, it's an oil and gas town. Joan Rivers, without missing a beat, turns around and goes, oh, I get it. Huge egos, small, Gets in her truck, and like we're all laughing our heads off. But yeah, like she was really cool, a really cool person. I really enjoyed that interaction with her. Like a lot of the media guests are super cool people. They're just, sometimes they're a little sick. Like Paul Reiser was, poor guy, came in and he was just ill. But I mean, like, because he was, last year was the Aliens thing, right, with Sigourney Weaver, and that guy just trooped through it. I genuinely like saw him, like, I mean, moxie to him for coming in and doing his obligations there. But that guy was just, if it had been me, I would have been like, I'm taking a knee on this one. If you need to see me, I'll be in this cot, and people want me to sign an autograph. I'll do it on my back, but yeah.
It's a personality that in no matter what situation, there's that, I don't know. You have it too. So the first time I went in your store, I was just looking for some wine, and you were like, "Can I help you?" And I was just cranky, and I'm like, I know nothing about wine, so I'm irritated. I'm like, nah, I'm just looking, and you're like, yeah, okay, and you blew past it and helped me find some wine. And I was like, this guy seems pretty cool, and that's why I went back, and because like I know this guy's friggin' hilarious. I can tell just by like a little interaction. I was like, I gotta have him on the show for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. I think a lot of us. I think a lot of people forget, that when somebody's having a bad day, you have to be cognizant of it, and you have to make, if you can, you turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too, I mean, when I started working, I started in the restaurant industry. My godfather, Paul Smolin, who owns the Heart House restaurant out in Deer Lake in Burnaby. It's a fantastic 4, if not a 5-star restaurant. I mean, it's gorgeous. If you Google Heart House, HART House, it is honestly beautiful.
I'm going to be sitting here for hours just tagging all the things you mentioned.
It's honest. It's pricey, but it's amazing service.
Yeah.
Extremely high grade food, and it's just it's not just a restaurant like you eat. Like you go to, you go to McDonald's or you go to Red Lobster, you're just going there for food. You're not, you just want to eat something. But when you go to something like Heart House, it's an experience, right? You pay not just for the food, but you pay for the fact that it's this old turn of the century house that he renovated to this gorgeous restaurant. It's right on Deer Lake. You literally forget that you're in the middle of Vancouver because the place is just so niched.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people have forgotten, we've so gotten into being trained, and like I said, this is me seeing a problem and fixing it. Mm-hmm. Is that liquor stores? I have a liquor store down the block from my house. Like literally, I can walk a block and I am at the liquor store. It is so unfriendly, so crowded, mm-hmm. and so just I don't want to be there. That in the 7 years that it's been there, I've been there maybe a total of 10 times. Maybe.
You do own your own liquor store, though.
That was before I even owned it, right? Like, that was before I owned my own liquor store, right? Yeah, I mean, I always tell my wife, I'm going to go down to the liquor store and pick something up. And she's like, you do own your own liquor store. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And so I think a lot of us have gotten into this habit of these poorly run liquor stores, and a lot of new Canadians, when they come to Canada, because they can't have liquor stores in their own countries because they're very tightly regulated, mm-hmm. see how much money they make, they assume the same thing here, so they pump all their money into a liquor store, and they find out that here, we've trained our consumers to just, grab the bottle and get out, mm-hmm. right? And it's funny, like, I'd say a good 80% of the stores you walk into, there isn't a single person in the store who has any product knowledge, because they don't drink any of it, mm-hmm. right? And
they're getting paid whatever the minimum wage is, so why give a shit?
Exactly. And so when we got the store, I'm proud of the fact it costs me extra money, but I pay for Kim and Andre and myself and my wife to drink. Mm-hmm. So we always taste the products. We now make a point of, instead of the agencies coming to us and sampling on us, we do wine tasting nights. So if agencies want new product, our clients are now forced to drink to choose the product, right? But what we did is we turned this from a liquor store to a wine boutique, that we basically said we have very stringent criteria about who we bring into the store, mm-hmm. right? I still have to cater to a fixed income crowd, so mm-hmm. we do have some what I call, lower price point wines like Copper Moon and Gallo. They don't really move that much, nor do they really make me that much money, because every other liquor store is competing on price. Well, that's a fast ride to the bottom, right? Before you're running a very expensive hobby, which is I think what happened to the former owner, instead of running a business. We raised the prices universally, capped it from 512 agencies. We work with 9, and we're very tightly focused on the product. So when you come in and you tell us what you like, we can get you what you like because we try it all. No word of a lie. Everything that comes into that store, we have drunk, right? So we're able to speak to it, and we're able to translate, and that's the other thing, we're able to translate our passion for good booze to our clients. Because all of us working there would rather, instead of spending the $10 and buying Copper Moon again, we'd rather save for 4 weeks and then get a great $40 bottle of wine. Because we'd rather drink that. Also, it helps that all of us, Kim and myself, have been involved in the industry, and so we know the like we also know what we like and we know what we don't like. We know how to hunt for deals and when to hunt for them. And then Andra picks it up really quickly, and my wife, she just, she doesn't really like booze. For her, it's always been indifferent. So she's slowly developing a palate. So, but that's the whole point of the store, and then the store is just another way of leveraging more opportunity down the road for myself.
I think my original point was that, you probably did a lot as far as the business and stuff, but like when you walk in, it's like your fun zone. People are walking into your fun zone. You've already got it set up, so it has that atmosphere and that feel when you come in. You're like, it feels different. It's different from somewhere where they're just like, hi, and they don't even look up from whatever they're doing.
Well, the thing too is I think customer service is a dying beast in Canada for whatever reason, right? I mean, how many restaurants? It's kind of like restaurants too. Like my wife and I hardly ever go out unless it's to a high-end restaurant. And we go to a high-end restaurant, we want to go because we want the experience, right? I mean, our go-to place is out this side of the mountains. We really like the Delta Kananaskis Lodge. The food's not over the top, but the experience is fantastic.
Is that the one that's out on the way to the mountains on the native reserve there?
Just past the native reserve. Like, so you take a left at the casino.
It's newer though, right? And it's very open, and it's up top of the gas station. Although that doesn't sound very high end, but
No. The Delta Kananaskis Lodge is so you have to head into K Country, which is provincial park, or federal. I can't remember which. And it was where they did the Olympics, and they housed all the Olympic athletes back in the day. And it's very nice. And the thing, I think Calgarians just don't want to either drive that fast or far rather, or don't understand where it is. But it's a fantastic little place. It's really a lot more inexpensive than you'd think. And on Sundays they do a $30 all-you-can-eat buffet, which is average, but they kick in swimming as well. So after your buffet, we go spend 4 or 5 hours at the pool, and there's nobody there, which I like because I truly hate human beings on my off time. I want to be by myself, so it's nice because it's just me and my family. So that sort of thing. Or we'll go to the Fairmont. Every time I go to a Calgary restaurant, I am just disappointed because the customer service is abyssal. We went to Notable. And we laugh at it because no, not really.
No? That's when I was there.
There's no table. We had to do a reservation. They booked me 3 weeks out, and I'm like, well, that already kind of got me ticked off. When we got there, the service was so bad. We're like, not only is there no table, but they're not able to do anything. And the food, you're paying a lot for food, but compared to what I'm getting for the experience of being there, it was crowded. It was noisy. It was way too hot. The food was good, but for what I spent at no table, I probably got. They're just they're not able to do the same experience that you get at the Fairmont. Even Shikiji up on Center Street, Japanese restaurant, much better, way lower price point. The experience at Teatros is much better. And that's the thing. I think people just kind of gravitated towards because it's a lot of media hype. It's really not that good. I'd rather spend my money getting the experience.
Customer service and the experience is what it's all about. All right, so we got like an hour left, and I haven't got to talk to you at all about booze.
All right, let's go talk booze.
Now, before we get into it, can I offer you some shitty booze?
No, dear God, please don't do that to me. I would take some more coffee, though.
All right, I'll get on that.
Today is a low boozy day anyway.
Is it? Do you have certain days that are low boozy?
I have to. The biggest issue is that I drink, you run a wine store and you find yourself drinking, 8 glasses of wine a day, and you realize, I am a functioning alcoholic. So I've gotten down to not drinking certain days, and Saturdays is one of those days that's I gotta watch myself. So a little bit lower.
Why don't you tell the people your name and where they can find you on all kinds of different platforms?
All right, my name is Marek Hejduk. I own the Point McKay Wine Store. You can find me at Unit 1, 145 Point Drive Northwest, Calgary, Alberta. That's my postal code. Thank God I have these coasters. It is T3B as in Bravo 4W1, and you can reach us at 403-286-1936. And we don't have any low rent, items. We handpick our entire selection. We have beautiful wines from all over the world, anywhere between the $10 to $250 price range. Like I said, we have a wide variety. We only serve craft beer at our store, and we don't serve crafty beer. So our qualifications for beer in our store to get into our beer fridge, you have to be an independent brewery, so you cannot be owned in any part by any macro brewery. So no Molson Labatt's or Anheuser-Busch investment, 0% money from them or ownership. You have to be producing less than 6 million liters a year, which isn't really that much in the beer industry once you get to the titans. You also have to give back 5%, a minimum of 5% of your net income as a brewery to the community that you brew in for community development. And that's what gets you into my beer fridge. Anything else less than that, you are not allowed inside the beer fridge. So we don't carry any Molson Labatt's. We don't carry any sort of Big Rock.
No Keystone?
No Keystone. No, that's Minhas, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think that's Minhas.
I went to the doctor a while ago, and he was like, you have to stop drinking beer. And he didn't say stop drinking. It was just beer because of the preservatives in it, he told me. And Keystone advertises that they don't use preservatives. So in my brain, I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's healthy beer. What do you think is the most healthy beer?
Honestly,
at least in your store,
craft. And I'll tell you why craft. So a lot of the big beer manufacturers use a lot of they do use a lot of preservatives. They over-filter their beer, and don't get me wrong. There's people who have gotten used to it, who like drinking the high filtered taste of beer, and that's cool. Everybody's got their jam, man, and I'm not going to tell you what.
Does the over-filtering make it a little more watery, or?
Yeah, so let's look. So when you brew booze, right, it comes with a whole, it's a fermentation process, right? And fermentation also creates a whole bunch of, for the lack of it, not bad parasites, but basically flora and fauna, right, that get put in your stomach, that are native in your stomach. And sorry, we're going to segue into medical science a little bit.
That's fine. Yeah.
They discovered one of the big problems that we have, and this is something that this is on the forefront of psychology and psychiatry right now, is that a lot of mental issues that people have are caused by the fact that they lack proper stomach bugs, right? So things that are inside your gut that help digest, if you lack them, basically they don't take away some of the chemical nutrients that you need to be even keel as a human being. And it is, and I wish I remembered the real technical term for it, but the guy who found this out, his dad had a huge problem with his stomach. His doctors are giving him, Pepto-Bismol and all these harsh antacids. And so he became a researcher of gut flora, and he discovered that some people have, different gut flora and other gut and healthier gut flora, which enabled those people to be more even-keeled. Mm-hmm. So he created a process, and he called it, and once again, I do not remember the real technical term, but the colloquial term is a pooectomy. So he would take poo from a healthy human being and put it into the gut of an unhealthy human being, and lo and behold, that would fix all the problems. So what they did is they started researching for all these chemicals, and they discovered that by adding these chemicals, it minimizes the symptoms of Down syndrome, of autism. There's a lot of things that your gut flora affects in terms of your cognitive functioning because of the micronutrients that are pulled from your gut. Which is not what Big Pharma wants to hear. They just want to sell you more Pepto-Bismol.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, don't look at the root of the problem. Just pump them full of Tums and antacids and stuff. Yeah.
So this is where craft beer comes in. Craft beer, it's people who are passionate about beer, right? It's not people who are wondering, how much more beer can I sell so I can get the next Mercedes I want to drive, right? Because they need to, which is pretty much Molson and Labatt. And I'll tell you why exactly they're out of my store. Second, those beers are these guys who are passionate about beer, they do it, they brew in a very traditional manner as well. So they're not, and if you ever look at, there's a brilliant TV series from BBC, James and Oz Drink Great Britain, and they go to the microbreweries to people who are brewing out of their literal garages to Carlsberg, which is like one guy running a brewery for all of Europe that brews Carlsberg, and his day-to-day job is show up, hang his hat, press one button, press another button, and if anything goes wrong, he can either fix it or he has to call somebody, but he works by himself. Right, and it's just like we're talking hectoliters of booze, all on the push of a button, right? All automated. Whereas these other people, they're brewing, real beer in so much that I call it live beer. So a lot of these like big macro breweries are brewing dead beer. It's highly filtered. It's very plasticky. It's the fast food of beer. Whereas craft breweries, because it's such a natural process, and they hardly filter if they do filter. It's a still live beer, and it's one of the reasons our growler bar. We have a growler bar in the store. We pressurize with CO2. Is that if we pour that beer inside, the way they do at a tap at Liquor Depot, what happens is that beer hits two things that it needs to start fermenting again: oxygen and heat. And as soon as oxygen and heat hit your beer, this is where a village brewery was running into a problem where their beer containers were exploding. So our process keeps beer totally flat. It's completely flat in terms of the fermentation process. In terms of the quality and taste, it's exactly like it is at the brewery. Bubbly, great beer because it's still live beer. Now, what does that mean to you as a guy who drinks beer out of my store?
Yeah, because I don't really care if it's all automated or whatever. It's end product, really, that I'm interested in.
The bottom line is that because they don't filter, all these beers still have all these little extra benefits from when you drink good craft beer. It's literally putting back bugs into your stomach, good gut flora, so you digest better. It's actually healthy for you. It keeps the heavy metal chemicals out of your brain because they can't attach themselves to your red blood cells.
Craft beer is good for me.
Craft beer is good for you. It's arguably the healthiest choice of beer that you can make. It won't mess your day up. You don't need to drink as much of it, so it's lowering in terms of your calorie count. And second, it's healthy for you in terms of your digestive process.
Why do these big breweries filter it so much? Why don't they just not filter it?
Because at the end of the day, for guys who brew craft beer, it's about loving great beer, and for big breweries, it's about money.
But it sounds like extra steps. If they're filtering it a whole bunch, that sounds like extra stuff that they're doing.
Because...
Is it because it's crap and they have to filter it?
I honestly don't know. Like, I can't even guess at why you would want to filter beer. I think I think what it is that because they're so big, like Molson Canadian is such a big product, right? And I think this is the kind of problem with a lot of big corporate thinking is that they think that, if you drew a circle of beer consumers, right, they think everyone in that circle is their client. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that circle is now being divided up, right, by palate, by taste. And they want to cater to as broad a flavor profile as possible to capture as much of the circle as possible.
Makes sense.
Right? So they want their product to be as middle, bottom of the road as possible, right, so they can catch the guy who, he's a construction worker doing $10 an hour, picking up corpses off the highway, but they also want to capture the guy who's, wondering about should he buy the Lamborghini or the Ferrari because it's so general. Mm-hmm. And this is what drives that industry crazy, is that craft beer says, yeah, we can capture that guy with this beer because we can brew it locally to this guy, but we can also capture the guy on the other end of the spectrum because we can capture his,
right,
his flavor profile. And I think that's what happens to Macro Brewery. So do you want me to tell you the big story?
Yeah.
Okay, this is
what the people want. The people want the inside information.
Here's the inside. This is why Molson Labatt's does not. None of their products exist in my store, and this is directly tied to I went on a almost crazed, for the lack of the better word, jihad against bad beer, right? So when I took the store over in January, I get this text to landline message from a rep, and he says, we're from a Labatt's rep, and he says, I'm going to be in your store on this and this day. I'm bringing my manager. See you then. That's not cool. The only way you talk to me if you're an agency is you come into my store, you book an appointment with me. Well, then I'll honor the appointment, and then we'll talk about your product. If you don't do those steps, I just kick you out of the store. And I realize that to some agents, I must be the biggest asshole in the world, but I don't care. I don't want to waste your time. Your product may not be right for my store, and I don't want to waste my time because, frankly, I don't want to be a raging alcoholic. Mm-hmm. So, Labatt's muscles and appointment.
It's showing respect. That's zero respect at all.
Well, and that's another point to it. So, Labatt's comes in. So this guy comes in with his manager, his supervisor, right? And you've seen my store. The sign out front on 3rd Avenue is very ghetto fabulous. Bright pink and yellow. Whereas you go into the store, it's wood finish.
Yeah.
So these guys come into my store and they start telling me how I need to put a Bud Light fridge into my store, and I'm telling them with all due respect, I don't need a Bud Light fridge. And so frankly, they're trying to sell me on their Labatt's is pushing Goose Island at the time. Now they're pushing Mill Street. But they're, trying to sell me that their craft brewery will totally fit into my store. Meanwhile, ignoring the fact that I don't want any of these products because they're not really that good. They don't sell that well. And to me, it's not about having your product in my store. It's about having product that sells, that the consumers want. I don't care what Labatt's wants in my store. They're not buying it from me. I'm buying it from them.
It sounds like they're used to people who own a hobby liquor store, don't know anything, and they're used to coming in with the absolute authority of, we are from the brewery and we know what's best for you.
It's pretty on the dot. So finally, after an hour of cajoling, they try to get me to get a Stella Artois fridge. And finally I said, look, I really appreciate you guys coming in, but I don't need these products. They're just not right for our store. And I kid you not, the Labatt's manager looks me in the eye and he says, you know what, buddy? You're going to buy our beer and you're going to like it because you need it or you'll never survive.
What?
This is Labatt's attitude to me. And I look at him and I told him, get the fuck out of my store. Both of you are trespassed, which I'm allowed to do because it's my private property. Yeah. And if you don't get out of here in 10 seconds, I'm calling the cops. Yeah. And you should have seen the look on these two assholes' faces because they freeze. I dial 911 on my phone. Like, I have my phone like this dialing 911. And I'm like, got my button on send. And I'm like, 10, 9, 8. They ran out of there. So Now,
Treat them like children.
well, I'm in martial arts, man. I run. I've been up some bad boys in MMA, and you know, it's very hard to intimidate me. So these guys run out, and I'm kind of a little nervous because I still care. Like, I still have guys who are buying Molson, who are buying all these products, and I realize they're part of my revenue stream. I just don't know how much of it. So I finally say, all right, you know what? I'm turf. Like, I make a decision that I'm gonna minimize, not turf yet. So I put another order in with Molson. Now, Molson goes through a company called Brewers Distributors Limited, and they distribute Canada-wide Molson, Canadian, and some Labatt product. It's really the same incestual family. I'm sure the CEOs have very vivid orgies in the boardroom together. So what happens is, also after playing hockey, because that really, like, honestly, you can stereotype every Molson Labatt's rep to ex-hockey player who got his job because of his ex-hockey player friends. Honestly, it's really quite sad because they're all overweight, beer-bellied, balding, and you look at them and you're like, you hit that stereotype of rep. Anyways, these guys, very one-dimensional characters in my mind. Anyways, Molson, not to stereotype those kind of people, you can come after me, we'll go MMA it out. So Molson does one more delivery and they screw up. And so they send me 8 packs of Molson Canadian instead of 6s. So I've still got some 6s that I'm selling, but I got these 8s in the back and I'm like, all right, I need my 6s. So I call Molson, or BDL, Brewers Distributor Limited, and I said, look, you guys send me 8s, I requested 6s, how can we fix the problem? Okay, so you guys, they tell me, what you need to do is on the invoice, write, you know, have 8s, need 6s, please resend, fax it in. Okay. And I'm like, how fast will this get fixed? Oh, right away. Okay. So that's day 1. Day 2, no response. Same thing. Day 3, day 4. Day 4, which is now Friday, which is my regular delivery day, I call Molson or BDL and I'm like, look, this is the problem. I need this fixed because I'm out of your 6s and I don't want to sell these 8s. And the operator at BDL, no word of a lie, goes, you know what, buddy? You'll sell the 8s, then you'll come back for 6s, and you know what? And then if we send you 8s again, what do you care? Because you'll sell them again. And I said, that a fucking right, Sonny Jim. So I put the 8s on, and probably illegally, so I think the AGLC might come down on me for the next time. So I was selling the 8s at $2 an 8-pack.
What? Oh, where was I?
I had guys come in who were like grabbing an 8-pack, and they're like, oh, how much do I owe you? I'm like, $2.40. And they're like $2.40? Like, yeah. Like $2.40. That's correct. I was cleared out of 8-packs within like a few hours once they'd found out.
Oh, yeah.
And then finally out of and I said, I'm never bringing their Molson Labatt product in ever again. Never. I don't care if I go broke and die because, you know, that's what they claimed it's going to cost me.
Right, yeah.
But I will never bring in Molson Labatt product or any peripherally related product like their garbage that they're trying to hawk as their craft beer. Never! Never! So now I'm really nervous because I'm like, I'm banking a lot on a very specific group of people.
Yeah.
And so, I got a nervous feeling about it, but I think any business decision you make, if you don't have a nervous feeling about it, it may not... you're not taking risk, and you need to take risk to be successful. And so
I think it aligns with the I don't know, like the main theme of the store, not having that shit in there. I think it has a one focus, and you're not catering to the crap.
Yeah, I think I fine-tune streamlines the inventory, but it was honestly a very nerve-wracking decision. And now I've got to buy more Village Brewery, Wild Rose, Tool Shed, all the local craft brews. Really do my homework to find good beer. And it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, it was a lot of upfront work, but I think now I've got a handle on it. Like I've narrowed it down. Remind me if I don't bring it up, the conversation I had with Picaroons. Picaroons Brewing out in Nova Scotia, I believe, or New Brunswick. they're gonna crap on me, but I should really know where they're from. But they're
hopefully Nova Scotia.
Yeah, hopefully Nova Scotia. Anyway, so and now I'm nervous about it, but the product's mostly gone. I'm selling it out at below, at cost pretty much, just to get it out the door. And 4 weeks after that day, Molson pulls up and it's a truck. So 2 months later, it was 8 weeks. And so they're like, we've got your 6s instead of 8s. You got pickeroons? Yeah, there you go.
I don't know if it says where. Oh, Fredericton, New Brunswick.
New Brunswick. Oh, I'm so sorry, pickeroons. I feel bad because they generally, genuinely very great beer, highly recommended, and super group of people. Anyways,
I think you paid up for it.
I hope so. I don't want to piss them off because I've heard great things about them. So this truck pulls up and this poor driver comes out and he's like, I have your 6s instead of 8s. I'm like, dude, we needed those 8 weeks ago. I didn't need that now. I'm like, just take it and go away. And I'm like, I hope that's the end of the story. And I didn't want to take it out on the driver because it's not his fault. He's just doing his job. So he takes off, and then 4 weeks later, I get a call from the Alberta Gaming and Liquor Commission. Hi, we're going to be yanking your retail liquor license. What? What are you talking about? They're like, well, you have an outstanding $75 and change that you owe BDL for the exchange on product. I'm like, they never talked to me. They never sent me a bill. They never even engaged. The driver didn't even make me aware that I owed him money for exchanging out product, right? But I owe them $75, $76. So I'm like, you're going to yank my license for non-payment? And they're like, well, you're not a member in good standing and you'll have to reapply. I'm like, look, let's fix this. I'll pay it right now. Yeah. Right this minute. So I shut down the store, literally in the middle of operations of the day, drove home because the computer that I've got is actually locked and it's passworded, so it's not at the store. So I get into the computer, I pay the $76, I send them the notification that I paid it to the Alberta government. I'm like, and I explained to them the prior story to all this, and she said, we get this a lot, and I'm like, so now I never have to hear from them again. She's like, yep, and I'm like, perfect. Store's still running. $76 from a complaint, as far as I see it, from Molson Labatt's almost shut me down for $76 without talking to me directly or even sending me an invoice.
They did try and screw around with you. Yeah.
And I'm like, if that's how you're gonna do business, you found the flames of insanity in this boy. So now I've got a real reason to support craft. Yeah. And we looked at the American brewer, thanks to a brilliant guy called Adam Seguin from Last Best Brewing downtown on 11th Street. Totally check it out. Great brew pub. Phenomenal beer. If you mention that you shop at Point McKay, they'll let you swim in the vats. They'll do a tour of the brewery. They do fantastic beer. And so Adam said, you should look into the American Brewmasters Association guide for beer, which was the definition. Their definition is produces less than 6 million liters of beer a year. Oh, okay. They do it in barrels. It translates to 6 million liters or less. They can be owned up to 25% by a macro brewery or a person that they themselves is not defined as a craft brewery. And they basically there's one more criteria. 6 million liters.
Was it giving back to the community?
No, it was independent. They have to be otherwise independent.
Right.
I tightened the rules so there's zero ownership of macro brew. And I also tightened the definition that they have to give back to the community. I'm honestly, when you look at Molson or Labatt's site, they're like, our employees planted trees. We're good for the community because we planted a tree. And I'm like, whoopee fucking ding. Russell Brewing in Surrey donated to the Children's Hospital and the chemotherapy clinic for kids.
Now that's what I was really curious about when you told me that initially when I bought my growler. You said that they have to give at least 5% back.
Yep.
Now
5% of net.
Yeah. Did you find that most were already doing this, or did you have to approach some who weren't and be like, I want to have you in my store, but you got to start giving back? Or
I'm not going to mention names about people who don't, because I don't want to give them negative publicity. And also to fairness, right?
Unless it's Molson or Blue.
Yeah, no, not even. It's just that they're starting out, right? They just they have to figure out where their revenue is going to come from, and they have to tighten up. In which case, I'll support their product if it's good beer.
Yep.
Otherwise, a little bit more mature craft breweries like Wild Rose and Village Now, even guys like Canmore, like Grizzly Ball, they're getting better at it. They already have that community give back.
Right.
Smaller breweries like Dandy, which is considered a nano brewery, they do a lot of community engagement events, which qualifies as well because they're spending their capital to get their beer out there, but they're doing it in a way that's basically bringing the community together.
Right. Are you going to kind of start your own standard? You know, like there's the American Brew standard, whatever.
I'm in the process of doing it because I think, one, I don't want the big boys and their money. I think they're aging dinosaurs that frankly should have been put out. They're a zombie business. They're basically plodding along. We make money because people drink Canadian. And they're not real. They're not real businesses anymore. They're just inherited, poorly run businesses with a lot of operational inefficiencies. Craft is still inefficient because it's a lot of guys who don't know business, but they love beer, right? And then they're trying to translate that love of beer to a business, right? So and I'm very good at helping. I mean, none of them have talked to me. Well, there's a couple, but like where can we pull some operational efficiency? Because that's what I'm my niche in. Anyway, so we pull that new definition out. My wife and I sat down, and like I said, Adam at Last Best, fantastic human being, helped me figure this out. And so we tightened the definition. So then, to finish the Molson Labatt story, I get a call from Molson Labatt's. From BDL, and they're like, we've noticed that you haven't ordered our product in 8 months. Is everything okay? Well, I'm fine. So would you like to order? No, not at all. Engage script B. Is it okay if I interview you? Why? Okay, no problem. So we do this, I kid you not, hour-long interview with the phone operator without a scheduled appointment, which I'm just like, this really got the rage going.
It's a vent.
It's a great vent. But, to give them props where props are due, they have a great order system. Their online system, I find, way more intuitive than the one that the Alberta government has. So props to that. The rest of their product's all garbage. I wouldn't use it to degrease an engine I wouldn't even pour it out from my dead homies because it's just crap, and that'd be an insult to my homies' memory. So,
and here I go.
It's okay. We'll teach.
No judgment.
No judgment. And so, at the end, and basically, the thing that ends, that caps the interview. So, the operator has finished the point form, 1 to 10, how do you feel questions, and she's like, is there anything you would like to say about, how our products make you feel? And I said, okay, your products make me feel like loading my Ford Explorer with explosives, strapping a vest to myself with ball bearings, driving into your brewery and incinerating myself and destroying your brewery off the face of the earth because your product is so terrible and you've monkey trained people to drink it that you're literally destroying good taste and real beer. You terrible human beings. And you get this like dead silence. And it's like, it's not just like it's just this uncomfortable silence where she realizes that if we were in the same room, it'd be like locked in a room with a rabid gorilla Wolverine hybrid that I would tear her apart. And so she goes, I can't write that. I'm like, what are you, demented? You just told me you recorded the whole conversation.
Yeah, writing.
This is already in, you moron. Like, how dumb. And this is to illustrate how they don't get it.
Yeah.
They go, well, is it okay if we send a rep to your store? I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. If there's one question I can ask you. And she's like, well, what's that? Do you like filling out missing people report? Because if one of them makes sense to put in my store, I'm dumping them in the dumpster. She's like, I'll take that as a no. And that's the last time I ever dealt with the big brews. And I finally stopped. And it made me realize one very important thing. Like, when Wild Rose, so my rep from Wild Rose, a guy by the name of Mark Brooker, you know, super knowledgeable about beer, worked for Big Rock, went to Wild Rose, really makes a point of looking out for me as a store, which I love, right? He's trying to get Wild Rose into the store. We actually have two owners, or two main investors of Wild Rose who shop at that store. And they're all disappointed that I wasn't carrying Wild Rose at the time. So they send Mark over, and Mark comes in and gives me a mixed sampler pack that he bought at a co-op liquor. And I've got this sampler pack in my cart. I got to drink these beers through and try them out and see if they qualify to put to my beer fridge.
Right.
So I take this beer home. Now, my wife does not drink beer. If she tastes beer, she spits it out and curses God's name. So what happened is, I poured out this beer, and I'm like, this beer is terrible. Like, it's just terrible. Like, there's no other word for the beer. It was water. Like, it was like drinking water. There's no flavor to it whatsoever. Yeah. So Bev, I pour some of this to Bev, my wife, and I give her the beer. And I'm like, drink this. And she's like, what is it? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you, because if I told her it was beer, she wouldn't drink it. So she drinks it. And I kid you not, she goes, is this Coca-Cola's new carbonated water? And I'm like, no, that's actually beer. She's like, oh, I'm drinking beer. So Mark, and this is to illustrate the point, right? I sent Mark this email, and I could read it to you if I had it queued, but I said, your beer was so bad, and I'm really sorry, but I can't carry that kind of product in my store. It's just, it's not what we want. 24 hours later, the VP from Wild Rose sends me an email, shows up at my store with a 12 sampler pack that he basically waited at the line to get off the line and drove it straight from right hot off the line and brought it down to the store. And he said, now try me out. And I'm like, you would never in a million years get that interaction from Molson Labatt's.
Yeah.
And all my
it's the love.
All the microbreweries maintain quality control, but it's the same for the wine and the scotches. Every time the wine reps that I work with have the producer, the guy who owns the vineyard in town, I'm their either first or last stop out, because they want to show that there's somebody just as passionate about their products as they are selling those products to consumers. And that's important to me. Yeah. Right. And I think that's where how the store works, is that we really work towards that to get good booze out there.
It feels like that. And do you sell canned beer?
Yeah, we have. I mean, there's a lot. It's funny. A lot of older guys back in the old days, canned beer was the low rent stuff, and bottled beer was the high end stuff. Because of the process on how they bottled in bottling plants, it was actually more vacuum sealed in a bottle than it was in a can, because cans have a wider surface area. Nowadays, the process for canning has come so far along. I mean, bottling too. I mean, it's negligible, but you're more likely to get oxidization inside bottle than you are in can. And so canned beer is actually a higher quality product, although mentally for a lot of guys over 45, I would even say it's associated with a low rent product. Right. Whereas it's in reality, in the craft world, it's a much higher quality product.
I guess it was the environmentalist in me that didn't even know that you sell cans, because immediately I see all the growlers and everything, and I realize there's probably a lot of energy and mining and whatever to get this can so that I can drink this tiny amount of beer, and then I don't chuck it out, I recycle it. So
I throw it in the Bow River.
It's not the worst because it's being recycled, right? But still, that's a lot of extra energy, and I'm going to drink. I know I'm going to drink in the next couple of days, so why not have a container that's reusable? It's almost like toothpaste. You you're going to need toothpaste your entire life. Why are we buying these individual garbage tubes? Like, how many tubes do you go through? And you're going to brush your teeth for the rest of your life.
I use beer.
You use beer? Nice. From a growler?
From a growler. No, so growlers are a funny phenomena. Like, they never really, they're taking off in Canada slowly. And I think the problem is once again, corporations like Liquor Depot, right, which is a publicly traded company, looked at, what's the most cost effective. And Village, I think, made the mistake of going down that same route and saying, these are the cheapest, the most, they basically, like from a cost to revenue ratio, are the best. and this is what we're going to go with because this will be our standard. And they made a very poor choice because they're very poor. They're very thin in terms of the glass. We went through a bunch of guys called Canadian Growler up in Edmonton, and they install our growler bars professionally. And they, are huge beer nerds. So they looked at the glass and said, we want something that's German glass, which is literally twice as thick because we pressure.
It's pretty heavy.
But it'll withstand a lot of pounds per square inch. It holds beer fresh for the longest, right? Like our growlers, I tell people 4 weeks, but I've had guys come back to me after like 6 months that have told me their beer is fresh as a daisy, right? So that speaks to the quality of the product. Second, you pour a growler at Liquor Depot, it goes flat like that. Whereas ours, you start pouring it in and out, you got 5 days before it's flat, right? So the growler phenomena for us, we don't mark, ours are the most expensive in the city, but we don't mark them up. Like there's a 5% markup on them. I kid you not. Like I want more people drinking good beer than I want to make money on my growlers. But where I make it up is in the price of the beer, which I'm competitively priced to everybody else. I've just realized that making as much money as I possible selling the containers makes no sense because I'm making it up on the other side.
I think it kind of locks them down a bit too. Like,
yeah,
for me it does. I want to use my growler. You're the closest growler bar to me, and on top of that, you're awesome, and I want to support you.
No, I appreciate that. There's a lot of guys. I have no illusions that they go to like Liquor Depot because they want Molson in there, which is pretty much like beheading a unicorn. Every time you drink Molson, another angel dies. Anyways, remember that, kids. So like the reality is that the growlers are designed for a specific purpose, and like I said, it goes down to how I run a business. Make money where you can make money, but to make money on something that makes no sense to make money on, that's the lowest problem, right? Because if your product is high quality enough, followed by customer service, people will pay it. To that point, Wild Rose did 1 liter growlers of their cherry porter. Like they don't have a system that fills 1 liter growlers, right? But they made the smart decision after talking to me a little bit. I'm sure somewhere in that conversation my name's come up, which we'll get back to Picaroons in a second. They put the cherry porter in 1 liter thick growlers, right? It costs them more money, but they're good, like they're solid growlers that you can pressurize, right? And so you're paying $20 for a growler, but now you get a growler out of it, plus some of their cherry porter, which is a fantastic little beer they've created out of their old brewery where they started. To get back to Picaroons. So Picaroons, I get the recommendation and I fire off to Dennis, can't remember his last name, the questions I have around what qualifies as microbrew. And I literally get an email from him. He was like, I was expecting your call. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, I've been warned about you. And I was like, uh-oh, we've got a reputation in market. Uh-oh. But apparently it's been going around with a lot of the microbreweries, right? Like, I'm not a big store, obviously, right? But I'm a very passionate store. And a lot of the microbreweries talk about me because I'm very articulate about what I want, what my criteria is to get into my store.
It feels like you stand for something. The store stands for something as well.
Exactly, right? And so the microbreweries and a lot of the reps have understood that what I translate to on product, right, that stands for something. I'm not there to flip volumes of Gallo and Molson to people, right? I want products that build communities. I want communities that are built around these products. And if your product doesn't do that, then get out of business. And I don't mean don't get me wrong, Molson Labatt's do give back to communities, right? But it's a very disingenuous give back in so much that it's, oh, you have a festival? Here's a check for $25, and then go away, right? Yeah. It's like that condescending parent who doesn't want to deal with the child, right? Doesn't want to engage the child properly. It's just like, here's a blanket check, deal with what you need to deal with. As long as you can say that we sponsor it. Yeah. And so, I'm actually quite surprised of all the big companies that I work with. I think Bacardi, a few minutes. Bacardi is probably one of the best companies that I've dealt with from a perspective. I dropped Diageo brand stuff in favor of Bacardi because Bacardi's give back to the community and their willingness to always support community festivals like the Riverside Run, which is done by a guy in the name of Christian Leach, who shops at our store. They funded the Brazilian Heat Festival this year as well, right? Like where they gave product, and it'd say, no, we're not the marquee product, but we're willing to give back some of the money in a way that engages that community, right? And Wild Rose stepped up to that plate as well, which I really enjoy, from that perspective. So
all right, so I'm going to put you on the hot seat since I knew this could go 3 hours.
Like I said, I'm a talker.
It's great.
And you fed me coffee. That was your first mistake.
And I didn't even get to any of the questions that I wrote down before. Okay. Number one. Okay, so best rum as far as giving back to the community, Bacardi?
Bacardi, absolutely.
Best beer. What's the best beer as far as health-wise and give them all around best beer? What's your best beer?
There's no best beer. There's just the one I like to drink the most. My favorite beer currently, I like Black Bridge from Saskatoon. Their milk stout is my favorite go-to stout beer. My favorite just general lager is the Hemp Blonde Ale from Bowen Island Brewing, which is owned by Kelowna Brewing, KB Company, or Northam Group actually. And my favorite sour beer right now is Townsite. They're up in Campbell River. Fantastic little brewery, amazing sour red ale.
The oyster beer I had at your store the other day, is that somehow more healthy for someone to drink than non-oyster beer?
Well, no, stout first off has more guts, more stomach bugs and stuff. Dandy, oyster beer is brewed with oyster shells in terms of adding the bicarbonate from the shells to make the beer frothier. Dandy did a fantastic job of that. It's a great oyster stout. I like the milk stout because they add lactose to the fermentation process.
This stuff that's watered down, this is hurting my health. Craft beer will help my health?
Well, let's not make any wild claims.
It's not going to cure my cancer. I get it.
It's healthier than filtered beer, yes.
Okay. I don't know anything about wine. Wine for dummies. What's your short 3 minute? How do I pick the best wine? I already know that anything under $10 probably was used, made with
steel
grapes that have pesticides.
Well, it's more likely steel vat. Anything under $10 is going to be steel vat made. It's going to be mass produced from multiple vineyards, and it's basically pumped full of sugar.
I heard Australian beer or Australian wine is a no-go.
You know what? Honestly, it makes no difference. You're drinking cyanide on some level in arsenic because of the content, the grape content, right? The reality is that wine for dummies is split like this. It's either red or white. That's the bottom line.
I like to gamble on the reds. I find that it's a better bet.
Then you want to determine, what do you like to drink? Okay, you want to drink Copper Moon? Fine. It's power to you. I don't, but people do. Then from red wines, you need to decide. Okay, what do I like to drink? Do I like sweet? Do I like what's called dry or high acidity? Right. So basically, whether you go red or white, you divide into two styles of wine, and I call it New World wine, which is kind of that flavor, that sweeter flavor that you get out of Napa Valley, California, because they jumped on the Australia bandwagon. Add a little bit of sugar to it, makes people a little happier, drink more. Or do you go traditional, which is more like the older European, and there's some Canadian guys who do it the same way, that it's a little more classical, it's a little more structured.
If I had to go a country and a price point, what's the best bang for my buck?
Spain and Chile.
Spain and Chile at like 15, 20?
You can do between 10 and 15.
10, 15?
Fantastic bottles of wine. I find them highly undervalued to pay for what you get.
Okay. Now, I had one of these crap beers. I just cracked it last night, and then I decided that I was going to go to bed instead of doing a late night drunken podcast. And what I did is I poured this into my growler. Is it going to be fresh when I crack it later today?
Because your growler isn't backfilled with CO2 to keep the beer flat, or to keep the beer static.
I thought I was being smart. Does doing good for the community hurt your business? And for example, the way that you pay living wages and you stock beers that are giving back to the community and like that. Basically, when you cut out that crap beer, did that hurt you? Did that hurt you a lot, or have you recovered from it? Or
there's two kinds of people that you want in your store. There's two kinds of people that will shop at your store. One are the bargain hunters, and I don't know why, but in North America, they're looking for a bargain and the cheapest deal, or you're looking for fans or fanatics of your store. Mm-hmm. I don't mind taking a hit in the pocketbook in order to build fanatics, because fanatics will build your store up.
Yep.
Because those people become passionate like you are, at least to some degree, not the same degree, about your store, and then they bring other people who want to be passionate about it. That I will never, ever regret sacrificing my money in order to make sure that everyone as a community supports me and I support them. Mm-hmm. We give to the Riverside Run, we pay for alcohol for other events, we give back in form of donations to a lot of charities. Yes, I could make more money if I didn't, but I do it in a way that's targeted to the Parkdale, Montgomery, Hillside, kind of, and Point McKay and Bowen-Ass, because I know that anything that we do from community development in some way pays me back a million times, and it doesn't have to be people shopping at my store. It's just a simple matter. I know that if I can make somebody's day better, then I can. If I can afford to, why not?
Right. Yeah.
And if I can't do it, even when I didn't own the store, and if I couldn't do it monetarily, I'd always donate my time.
Right. Building each other up and helping out.
Damn straight.
Okay, so now I'm gonna, because you said that you did some computer hacking stuff, and you also went to school for religious stuff. So here's what I'm gonna do. Do you understand, and just not understand, but know the basicness of M theory, string theory?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't know what's holding everything together, basically, right? Now, if you think about, say, just imagine this is a computer game or a video game or whatever. What is holding everything together? And
well, code if it's a computer game, right?
Yeah, kind of. So it would be a language, right?
Yeah, like a programming language.
Yeah. So
to some extent.
So we'll just say it's a language, and we'll use English as just the reference point. Okay, so the word W-O-R-D. What is holding those letters together to make it a word? Because that's really what they're looking for as far as string theory and M theory. They're looking for what it is that holds these things together that aren't together. As far as coding, what would keep that word together? Well, what groups that word?
Oh God, this could be an hour-long conversation. I've been looking at this actually. So I've been toying with a theory. It's like what inside our brains makes us, right? And that's essentially what this question asks, right? From neurocognitive theory, there's two ways of approaching it. There's the meat of it, which is kind of psychiatry, and then there's also the social construct that you've created in your head, which is psychology. And they're saying that, classic theory that different neurons connect with other neurons to form memories in order to base your brain in a way that's grounded, and using those formed neural connections to create more neurons in order to get your brain cobbled together so you make sense of the universe. So coding is like that. You write computer code that basically does something, visual and auditory representations that access different parts of memory in order to create a construct. And I think the thing that a lot of these things miss from scientific theory, and this is the part where I wouldn't say religion, but you kind of need that fantasy of what religion is.
Spirituality, forget religion.
Yeah, like spirituality of it. It's really the engagement of imagination. Is that a lot of it too? It isn't just that simple. I mean, our brains operate on harmonics to some extent, and they also operate on electricity. So once you've written code, that it's truly meaningless until the person has recepted it and internalized it, and then turned it into something that grows their world in terms of their imagination. So the word is truly meaningless gibberish to anybody, right? Being a fairly new parent and you're down that path, you'll see that, where your kid starts to connect these things through almost blunt repetition. But then there's this point, like right now, where she's just like, it's like a sponge, like a hyper sponge that's just picking things up, because now she's got the basis, or he in your case maybe as well, have the basis of building up the base. So when you see the word, it like I said, is gibberish until you contextualize it, internalize it, and then
the parameters of the language.
Yeah, not just parameters of the language. Like, language is meaningless. It's a social construct, right? Like, behavior is a social construct. Religion is a social construct.
Well, what's coding for a video game then?
Social construct.
Still the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically harnessing like hard rules to create blort, right? Blort is the end result of coding. Does it work well? But coding is essentially meaningless without some sort of end game in mind or end goal in mind that engages the creativity, right?
It's a construct and a parameters of the language kind of deal. Okay, so you're now a character in the video game.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out what the fuck is going on outside of this video game.
Yeah.
Your universe is inside the video game. You get down to the word, and you can't see what's holding those things together.
Yeah.
I don't think that you can ever see what's holding those things together, because as someone in the video game, how are you supposed to know the constructs of the language that was written?
Well, I mean, there's physical limitations to what you can do. Like, I can't fly. There's laws of sort of reality.
Unless you hack.
Even if you hack laws of reality, I mean, you're not hacking laws of reality. You're hacking social laws, right? Is there a third party entity? I don't think so. Like, I really don't believe in a third party entity, whether it's God, Shiva, Vishnu, Buddha, whatever. There's no third. That entity, from an imagination point of view, helps ground us in terms of understanding your place as you feel in this game. But the reality, there's nothing there. It's I think my grandma put it. It's something that if you need that to help you stand, then you will use it, right? But if you don't need it to stand, then I think the reality of it is you don't need it to stand. I mean, to get to deep philosophy, I think Ludwig Feuerbach, which is a forerunner to Marxist theory, he wrote it best in The Essence of Christianity. He said, religion's great in so much that it helps all of us move forward together. But when religion stops functioning in that we're moving humankind ahead, we need to throw it out, right? When you Paris attacks are a great example of it. When religion is causing you to harm other people, which you think is socially moving you forward, right, by incinerating yourself, right, or getting shot by police, it's a suicide note one way or the other. What you're doing is, your essence, you're now working against your social construct. And if you think about it, how you feel about Muslim people yesterday to today, right? What they've in essence done is harmed how we view Muslims, right? Most Muslims aren't like those people. Most Muslims, but that's the problem with Muslims or labeling somebody Christian, right? It's funny how fast Christians in America turned against the Pope. Oh, we love the Pope, until the Pope went and said, you know what? We're killing the earth. We need to, as Catholics, produce an environmental. Whoa, well, the Pope's not always right. Whoa. But that's exactly the problem. Is that I'm not a religious guy anymore by any means. I was raised Roman Catholic. I've never been impressed with it. But when the Pope comes out and he tries to use religion for what it was meant for, which is a unifying force to move us forward, and then so many people backlash against it all of a sudden. Well, now we got an interesting problem, because he's trying to use it for what it's good for, while now people are pushing back on it. Well, it's going to hurt my pocketbook. You asshole.
Yeah, that was a funny thing, because when they raised the minimum wage, the business owners were like, I'm going to go to business, or I have to raise my prices and everything. But really, they could just take one less trip to the Bahamas a year or whatever. They're making
So raise your prices. Don't dwell on the bottom.
Yeah, I thought it was complete crap.
I'm gonna have to stop you. I'm gonna have to use the bathroom. Unlike my daughter, I don't have a diaper.
That's all right. I think we're at your time. We're at your limit. Unless you want to give it more.
No, I could talk for hours.
I know. Well, what else do I have?
Here. Where's your bathroom? I'll come back and
upstairs. Upstairs, first door on the left.
Done. Upstairs, first door on the left.
Pretty easy, especially on sober Saturday. I guess I'll just ramble on for myself. I'll put a little ending thought in there right now. So these attacks on Paris, yeah, it's really horrible and whatever, but it's all just symptoms of the systems that we're currently under not being right anymore. I mean, the market was good back in the day, but we've outgrown it. Technology has changed everything, and we need to change with it. We need to change our views, our systems, and to be giving pushback on things because people want to stay the same. People want to stay comfortable. I don't get why they want to stay comfortable all the time and just be in a little safe shell and not take any risks, not be afraid of anything, and not grow at all. They just want to sit there and grow roots into their couch while they watch stupid reality TV or the mass media telling them how Muslims are bad and how I was listening to people last night and they were trying to figure out how to describe this to their kids, and a lot of people were justifying it like, oh, well, there's some bad people out there and all this shit. I'm telling you, if someone invaded your country and fucked around with your country the same way America's been fucking around with the whole Middle East your whole life, you would do the same shit. I'd do the same shit. I'd have a gun and I'd be taking up arms against this occupying asshole force in my country. So I don't really blame what goes on. I blame the systems for actually creating it.
There is no system.
There's all kinds of systems. We just need to break free from the systems, man.
No, there is no system. There's only the social constructs that we buy into. I mean, the reality of life is there is no reality other than the reality that we construct. There is no social consequences to doing anything other than our self-imposed limitations and other social limitations. I could kill you or you could kill me right now and believe there's no consequences to it and live that delusional life in prison. Right? But there really is no consequences other than the ones that we make real. And I think when you look at something like what happened in Paris, those are social consequences people are reacting to them in so much as they want to crack down on their Muslim populations in their country. That's the wrong way of looking at it. What nobody's looking at is why are those people? Why does ISIS exist? Why does ISIL exist? Why does Al Qaeda exist? Right? To some extent, these are moronic fanatics who want to propagate a religious. The German word is Weltanschauung, because that's what creates the world. That's what creates the world for them. Well, why? Why would? And let's look at it. Like, there's a lot of people that from that part of the world, right? They're highly uneducated. I mean, to the point where, like in Afghanistan, they're stoning girls for going to school. Like that's just the level of education that to the same extent that in North America we have people living in trailer parks who have the exact same attitude. They have more in common with Al Qaeda than they do with me. Mm-hmm. I think if we're not examining the reasons why these people are doing what they're doing, we need to start looking at that, because Christians are just as bad as Muslims. Americans have been inflicting their worldview as much as Canadians have, right? Why do people do it? And it's now these guys are blowing it up. They're protesting something, right? Mm-hmm. If you read the suicide notes of female suicide bombers from Palestine into Israel, one note, struck a profound chord with me, where this girl says, when you get to the point where the nation state killed your dad, killed your brother, drove a bulldozer over your house, killed the last 6 members of your family that were left alive because they are right to push the border out, mm-hmm. and I'm the only one left. And I went to school. I'm a master's educated student, but they've pushed me to that limit, mm-hmm. where strapping a bomb and nails and ball bearings and running into an open market in Israel made sense to me as a form of protest against the reactionary behavior they've practiced. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? You're looking at a paradigm that we're creating, mm-hmm. that's frankly useless. And to some extent, this sounds like the lofty goal. But my story is that it's this cry against most these big industries because they have no place.
Yeah.
Being in it for just the money is not a good enough reason to be in it. Donald Trump would be here arguing against me. Mind you, if Donald Trump was here arguing against money, I'd probably shiv him to death because he's worth $10 million to me dead.
Yeah.
But
El Chapo.
Exactly. But that's exactly my point. To even behave, to have your behaviors influenced or your morality influenced in so much that it costs money, that makes you a sociopath or a psychopath, right? And therein lies the problem with us as a species right now, is we don't.
It's not the species problem. It's the system. It's the economic system. It rewards greed. So of course it.
But that happens in wildlife.
Yeah, right? But we're not apes anymore. But why does a bird grab something shiny and use it for their nest? Because they like it. Yeah, that's great. But if the bird knew and was conscious enough to know that it's hurting the community or whatever to have that shiny thing, and that's actually
still do it because
it's a form of material violence.
The only difference between us and animals is in so much that the animals that got super fat and old and slow and stupid that would naturally die off get government subsidies to survive.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, when not, it'd be interesting to see how this Volkswagen thing plays out, but the Mercedes-Benz in 1996 or 97 was fined hundreds of millions of dollars from the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States, which they wrote off against their taxes because they found the loophole.
Oh my
right? God. But in so much that until recently, I think it was 2006 or 7, if you got a ticket in the way of driving up north to Fort Mac to your job, and all these guys speed like retards, they get a ticket, they would write it off on their taxes as a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Right? My point is that when you reward bad behavior, right, because you think that you need to, for whatever reason, rely on that bad behavior, that's why people, when they walk into my store and they ask me, what kind of, where's your Molson at? I mean, I don't, but my clients do. Tell them, you should have better taste than that.
What do you say? Because it must come up. There must be people that come in.
There are people who come in, and I basically tell them there's better product for them out there than product that supports companies. And this is fact, so I can say it. Yeah. Gallo was fined for bribing companies, illegal business practices. One of my favorite ones is Solo Liquor right now. Solo Liquor sells product that is $3 less than I buy it on limited time offer price. Right? And everyone's like, they have lost leaders in order to attract business. I've tracked them for a year. They don't have lost leaders. The only way that business is surviving is illegal kickbacks. They are doing, point blank, something illegal. And I've complained to the Alberta Gaming Liquor Commission, because they explain it away by, it's a lost leader to attract business. No. It is an illegal business that they get illegal kickbacks in order to run their stores. They underpay their employees, if not pay at all. And they frankly are a morally bankrupt business that force the representatives and the agents to stock it.
That's really that. I wish that I was trying to get an investigative journalist so that I could put them on things like that, right?
but that's my point, is that, a lot of people do some very shady things to get ahead in life. You don't step on people to do it. Anyways, I do have to get going.
Yeah.
I have a store to run and beer to drink.
Man, it was great having you in. Thank you so much for coming in. I'm going to try and link up all the names and breweries and stuff.
Picaroons from New Brunswick. I didn't get that wrong.
No, Fredericton,
New Brunswick. Moncton's Nova Scotia.
Fredericton, yeah. No, Moncton is New Brunswick.
Oh, God, now I failed history. I'm screwed.
Yeah, definitely screwed.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no
Thanks,
problem.
Neil.
Oh, thank you. It was awesome.